Hey guys, it's the Yorkshire Gerbil here and welcome to my YouTube channel where today we're doing a speed build in The Sims 4. We're going to be making a Sims hospital that's situated in Magnolia Promenade, which is the world you get with the Sims 4 Get to Work expansion pack. The base game and Get to Work are the main expansion packs that I'm using within this build, but I've also got Seasons, City Living, Jungle Adventure, Spa Day, Cool Kitchen stuff and backyard stuff installed, so there may be a couple of items from those expansion packs as well. The cheats that I'm using for the game are just move objects, and also I've got the career items unlocked, so there may be a couple of items in the build that aren't found in the normal house inventory, but if you unlock career items then you can use them within the gameplay. So we're just looking at the floor plan at the moment. On the roof I wanted some industrial style vents that I had imagined you'd find in any industrial or hospital building. The little cove in the middle, I thought it would be a nice area to maybe have a garden outside or a lookout from when patients are sat in bed. They see a little bit of greenery and daylight instead of just staring at hospital walls. The layout that I've got for the building, downstairs I wanted an alien entrance kind of area, and then upstairs I wanted to base that on wards. So I imagined a male and female ward, and then also a pediatric unit, which is going to be towards the left of the building that I'm doing at the moment. It's quite a small build to build on, but I kind of wanted to get everything in, so some isolation rooms or private rooms for patients that maybe had some infectious diseases or needed private space. We're just starting to look at the doors and windows to place around the building. The main entrance I initially wanted to be in the middle, but we changed that a little bit later on. And the windows that I'm currently placing, those two tiny ones, I imagined to be protective windows that didn't allow any radiation to escape, because that's going to be the X-ray and surgical room that you'll see when we start to put some items in the build. The windows that I've placed around the building I thought were fitting for a hospital environment. I imagined that you could open them one by one and that they had safety latches on, so you couldn't open them wide enough for anybody to get out of. And then the door that I'm currently placing is the X-ray door, which is also the same style that I found the windows from. I think that's from the Get to Work expansion pack, and that's definitely one of the unlocked career items that I used. I love these little doors that I'm placing now. I imagined when you're rushing through they would push open and swing both ways to allow patients and staff to get through and into the emergency department. And now, like I said earlier, we're just changing the layout of the main entrance into the hospital. So I imagined on the right would be the main entrance, and then the white door that I've just placed could be an area where ambulances and emergency patients could access A&E straight away. The corridor that we've just created there goes straight into a resus room where I imagined patients could be taken straight into when they needed emergency care. The room that I'm just starting to create now I imagine to be a triage room, so that patients that have brought themselves to A&E that think they need emergency care could be assessed by a nurse or doctor, and then either taken into the emergency department or sent back to their GP surgery for less emergency care if they didn't need to be there. The doors and windows that I'm putting in now are in the pediatric ward, and I imagined them to be a safety precaution so that patients that needed single rooms could be looked at by nurses and doctors and made sure that they're safe. The layout that we have on this level I think really works, although I imagined that if the hospital was to expand we'd create a third floor and then have the pediatric department upstairs, whilst on this level there would be male and female wards. We're just putting in the windows for the upstairs now. I changed these to smaller ones just so that patients had a little bit more privacy, and so if there were people outside they couldn't see into the rooms to see what patient care was going on. The walls and floors, I initially were going to put all white, but thought it looked a little bit too clinical. The paediatric department is a lot brighter and more colourful than what the male and female wards are, but I think within every hospital department, paediatrics are always a little bit brighter, where adult wards have a lot more neutral and cooler colours. These circular lights I placed in the E&E department because they're really bright and it's kind of 24/7 go all around the clock care. Whereas the strip lights that I placed in the wards, I think they're a little bit dimmer and they allow for more of a calming environment instead of a entirely clinical one. And that's the little courtyard that I mentioned where patients could just sit and look out of their windows. The X-ray room that I've just created, I imagined the wallpaper that I placed on to be kind of an industrial wall that doesn't allow any radiation to escape from the X-rays that will be going on in there. And now we're just starting to furnish the hospital. This was the resus room that I mentioned, and I love those little drip stands. I think they just bring the whole place together and make it seem a lot more clinical. The waiting room and triage room for the A&E department is what we're doing at the moment. The little desks that I found, I really loved the little heart sign on the front. And we put a few of those around as kind of reception pointer areas for patients and relatives to seek any help or advice. The chairs that I've got in the triage room are very plain and very basic, but they do the job, which is what hospitals usually have. They're practical, but they're nothing flash. The surgical table that we're placing now, I imagine could be used for emergency surgeries that need to happen. There isn't an X-ray table that I found within gameplay, but we can pretend that that could also be used for X-rays, any CTs or MRI imaging any patients need. And this little storeroom I imagined the table that I've just placed in there to be a blood gas machine, so we could run any emergency blood tests, and the file there to store any patient folders and information sheets that we need. The little gas cylinders that I found I really like. I imagined that they were full of oxygen and that if we needed any emergency oxygen we could just grab them to use them. I placed 4 beds in here initially, but I thought it looked a little bit too crowded, so we take one away and I'm pretty sure we just end up with 3 in the end. And the curtains, I really wish the gameplay had some sort of drop down curtain that comes from the ceiling that we could pull around when patients needed privacy and open them up when they were needed to be more observed. All of the furniture that I put in the department I placed because it looked like it could be easily cleaned. They're all simple shelving and chairs that could just be wiped down with wipes to make sure there were no diseases or any infections left behind by patients that had been there. At this stage I kept thinking there was something missing, and I realised that we didn't have anywhere for staff to wash their hands and also a nurse's station. So we get rid of one of the beds to make it a little less crowded and create a little hand washing area and a station for nurses to sit at when they're looking at patient information. The floors I thought looked a little bit too bright in gameplay, so we changed a couple of them around to make them a little bit darker but still easily cleanable. And now we're moving on to the main part of the hospital, the communal entrance area. In this area we're just starting to create a small kitchen. I imagined this to be a cafe where visitors, patients and relatives could come and get something to eat if they wanted anything. It's also a lot less clinical than the rest of the building. So it's a nice area for patients. If they need some time off the ward, they could just come down to get something to eat and imagine they're not in a hospital. There's a countertop for a member of staff to stand behind and serve people as they're coming in. And then again, the table and chairs that we place are still very clinical and easy to clean down when somebody's finished eating. We place a lot more decoration in this part of the hospital. I ideally would have liked to create a small shop in the other corner of this room where relatives could have come in and bought patients any new items of clothing or underwear or necessities that they were needing whilst they were in hospital. But I couldn't find any clothing racks or shop style display racks that I could have used for it. So if there is anything that you've noticed in gameplay, then comment down below and we can have a look at putting something around there. Or if you would like to download the build, then it's on the Sims gallery and you can place a little shop in the corner if you wanted to. It would be nice to know how any of you guys would decorate this area, so if any of you download the build and change anything up, then show me your ideas and what you'd like to do with it, or comment down below any ideas that you think would look good around here. You might be able to see that I've placed hand sanitizers around the building. They're pretty much at every entrance, every door to any department, and I really like the idea of them because they're always in hospitals when you go to visit. We're now looking at creating a little seating area, TV area for people that are maybe waiting for appointments or waiting to go up to the ward so they can sit and relax before they need to go in to see anybody, and a little reception area as well. And that's most of the downstairs decorating done. We're just moving upstairs to the pediatric department now. This is definitely my favourite area of the hospital. I really enjoyed decorating this part. The visiting room that we're doing now, I placed there because I thought pediatrics should have an extra port of security, so relatives and visitors can only enter the ward by coming through the waiting room, and then they'd be greeted by a member of staff that would either give them access to the ward or ask them to wait if any personal care was going on. The sofas and decorations that are in this room are a lot nicer than the ones that are in the triage room in the A&E department. I imagined this to be because either pediatrics get more funding or that they had items donated from people to make it more homely. We're now moving on to the main pediatric unit. This initially was just a station for nurses, but we switch it up and give the children somewhere to eat their meals. And I wanted the unit to have cots, beds for toddlers and also children, so it could serve anywhere from newborn to late teenage years. There's not a massive amount of room to create lots of beds, so we moved the cots into one of the isolation rooms, just so they're separate from maybe the older children that are on the ward. And it's also quieter for them to sleep. The room that we're doing now, I imagined if there was a child in there that had to be isolated, then they had their own bathroom, their own sink and area to do what they needed. And I also put a little potty in there because it could be used by a toddler or also a young child. I decorated the pediatric ward a lot more than what I have the adult. Gave them toy boxes and little decorations to make it feel more homely and not as clinical, so they weren't as upset while they were there. And we create a little changing station in what would have been a bathroom if it was used for an older ward. So you can change these rooms if you like to. You could have them as cots for children, but you could also use them as isolation rooms if you wanted to change that around. We're now just creating a table and dining area for the children to have a separate place to eat any meals or maybe do any arts and crafts work that they wanted to do whilst being on the ward. I like that the chairs were different colours. Again, it's not like that in the adult ward, but children's always have more decoration and are a little bit more colourful. We're just creating the bed spaces for the children now. And there's a drip stand at every bed space, every cot, so that antibiotics or fluids can be administered to children whilst they're sleeping. I don't know if it's the same across other countries, but here in England, most hospitals will have on-site teachers for children whilst they're in hospital, so I placed the bookcase there with the imagination that there would be educational books and things in there to help with schoolwork. And once a day for a while, there'd be a teacher that would come on site and gather the children round the table and help them with any work or homework they had to complete. Moving on to the adult wards, we have a nurse's station when we first enter the ward. It's not as restrictive as what the paediatric unit is, so you can, as a visitor, come straight onto the ward and be greeted by a member of staff. This would also be the area where the ward clerk would sit and deal with any admissions, discharges, sort out all the paperwork that patients needed whilst they were in hospital. I love all the little filing cabinets and things that I found. I think they just tie everything together and make it look a lot more realistic. We're now starting to place the beds in for the hospital. This is a bay for 3 people, and I imagined it to be not mixed sex, so this could be a female bay where the other side would be for males. And each bed space has a little wardrobe by it where each patient can put their belongings in that they've brought into hospital with them. There's a curtain placed there just to add the idea of privacy, but once you're in the bed there's not a great deal of privacy for patients. And just a couple of generic photos on the wall to try and make patients feel more at home, a little bit less clinical. This room that we're doing now joins the male and female wards together. It can be used by both wards, and it's an area for patients just to go sit and relax, and also has a little kitchen if they want to make any food or drinks. Relatives could also use this if they wanted anything to eat or drink whilst visiting patients. The main catering service for patients I imagined would come from an outside company, so food would be cooked off-site and then delivered daily to the wards. This little room in the corner that we have, I created to be an isolation suite. I really liked the idea of this, and I found a little shower that is kind of a decontamination shower in there. So staff they walk in the first room, which is they have to wash their hands and get gowned up before going into the bedroom, and then when they come back out, degown. If the patient's really infectious, then also decontaminate in the shower that's there. And we have a little nurse's station or ward clerk desk here as well for the male ward. This was a lot more tricky to decorate because the space is really short, and we moved things around a bit before really figuring out how to optimise the space that we have. The beds, when I first put them in, there was no space to walk around, and we end up extending one of the walls just to give it a little bit more room so we can create a 3-bedded ward like the previous one. The bathroom there we delete and create a bed space down in the corner. I imagined that one to be more of a high observable bed, so the nurse's station is right next to it, and any patients that needed to be closely monitored would have that bed. And then there's 2 extra beds that we placed just here, just like the previous ward, with a curtain for added privacy. And again, each bed has got a little drip stand and a wardrobe by each bed space to use. The bathrooms here are used by both male and females. The male and female parts of the ward, there's none on the other side of the unit. a shower room and just a single bathroom in there as well. And a fish tank upstairs, because who doesn't love a fish tank? And that's most of the decorating that we've done. Just a safety barrier for the staircase. Going back downstairs, I decided to create a basement underneath the hospital, just as a place for the pipe work. I imagined this would be where the maintenance and things like heating and electricity would come from, where estates would sit. It's closed off from the rest of the hospital, and we pop a little sign on that wall, just a no entry sign, so no visitors or patients can get down there. And we put a couple of warning signs on the walls as well. Some do not touches. Make sure you're wearing your equipment before going down. Now looking at the outside of the building, I thought it looked quite plain. It needed something extra just to jazz it up a little bit more, just so it wasn't so white and, I don't know, like old school hospital like. So we changed the colour of the walls. We had a couple of bits onto the front door. And also the Pediatric department we changed the colour of as well, just the outside of it. I liked that they had the red hats, so we changed that from the blue to the red sign. Get rid of the post box because we don't need that. And create a little pathway for people to come into the hospital. I was just looking at how we could make it a little bit more interesting and just not so much of a flat-based wall. As you can see off camera, I created the little parking spaces down the side of the hospital. There's a little parking meter there as well to pay, a couple of cameras so we can monitor who's coming in and out. And then we're just adding a little bit of greenery around the hospital just to make it look a little bit more inviting. The bit at the front, the black tarmac, I imagined would be somewhere where the ambulances could pull up, and then they have immediate access straight through the front door into the resus room where patients can be treated. I need to practice a lot more with landscaping and gardening. I'm not the best at it, but I enjoy doing it. We create a little seating area just out the front, just so patients can sit outside and get some fresh air, but don't have to go off site for anything. And then I was looking at maybe making the walls just a little bit brighter, adding some character to the building. The local hospital where I live, the Pediatric department, has a rainbow wall, which I thought was really cool. So I just placed some wallpaper on the outside of the hospital which indicated that that was the Pediatric department, and it just made it look a little bit brighter, which I liked. And then just changed the front of the hospital as well. We're just doing the last finishing touches to the outside of the building now. A little bit more landscaping, and then I ended up popping a couple more fans on top of the roof, just so it looks like the wards have got some ventilation and things going on as well, to help that side of the hospital. And that's the build all finished. There's just some still shots of the floor plan and some of the departments now as well. The main entrance to the hospital leading into the reception desk, kitchen area and cafe for those wanting something to eat, little magazine rack there, the floor plan for downstairs, basement and electrical work, and then moving on to the A&E department, the entrance for the ambulances. Floor plan for the A&E, triage room, and as they're chatting to some patients. And this is the build in action. A lot of people around a poorly child in the resus room. I really like the picture that we've got for the x-ray. And that's the finished floor plan for downstairs. Moving upstairs to the adult wards, male and female, female on the right, male on the left. Little kitchen area and a place for patients to sit. I really love the decontamination shower, I liked how that turned out. And last but not least, the Pediatric ward. The little waiting area before relatives can go into the ward. I really hope you enjoyed watching this speed build. Comment down below if you'd like to see any other builds, what you think would be good to make. You can follow me on Instagram at the Yorkshire Gerbil. All of my builds are on the Sims Gallery at the same username. And thank you for watching. I hope you all have a lovely day wherever abouts in the world you are, and I'll see you again very soon.